Good evening and welcome to Adventures in DeFi Kingdoms. This is Raph streaming to you live high above the keep here in Crytalvale. We have Neindorf and he has made the first half of his perilous journey out to EthDenver for DFK Day. Neindorf, how you doing?
Doing well. It's kind of been a bit of a whirlwind here. I'll tell you what.
I bet. All right, well, let's jump right into it. Well, let's first go through, shout out who you bumping elbows with out there.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny, right? You get into there. It's basically a conference room, a larger conference area, and I'm like, I know the people I want to go find, but I'm like, I don't know who they are. I don't know what they look like. So it was kind of funny. You just kind of had to try, to see who is who, and obviously, so there's different people who have YouTube channels, and you can recognize them that way. So, first person I noticed right away was Tosh, and I went and chatted with him for quite a while. He was awesome. It was really great talking with him. A lot of good conversation, and some strategy here and there. So that was great. Uh, and then as far as from the team themselves, I had the largest time I was able to chat for a while with Professor Tango, which was really good. So, we'll get into that a little bit later, but it does really lead me into my question of the day, my conversation with Tango, actually. So I'll just go ahead and drop it.
Go
Um,
for it.
what is the purpose of bloaters?
The
What are you
purpose of
thinking?
bloaters. Well, I know in the item notes, one of my favorite things to read over and over again is that it states that they're worth their weight in gold, but they're mostly hot air. So I imagine they're fairly worthless. What do you have?
So yeah, in chatting with Tango, we got talking about, some of these various tokens, and things that are going on. And the bloater came up, of course, because there's the little table with this, the swag on it, and the little bloater, uh, you know,
Yeah, Bloater Nation
drink
strong.
less and whatnot. But basically, he was saying, he's like, what happens if these eggs that are about to hatch pretty soon, right? He's like, well, what happens if they need to eat? And what if they eat bloaters? And I was like, wait, what? I was like, you mean to tell me pets might eat bloaters? I was like, no way.
That is some incredible news. I couldn't be happier. I there's no love loss for me with bloaters and ragweed. I just it's a lot of clicks for, you know, bloaters and ragweed. So that's
Two and
pretty
a half
cool.
gold.
Yeah, exactly. That's really cool that they're implementing some ideas for the future, or hopefully doing that. So very cool. All right. Well, there was a really cool AMA. Well, I guess not an AMA. It was more like a presentation because I don't think they took a lot of questions, right?
No,
Um,
none really, actually.
and they had a video playing in the background that was streamed on YouTube, and so I was able to sign into it. You were there in person, listening to it live. Give me first kind of the hype in the room for the release that talked about the perilous journey, the journey to Crytalvale, and I guess what was going on tonight.
Yeah, so I had the fiat mine was keeping me busy during the day, so I arrived a little later than a lot of people. It was pretty clear when I walked in that there was sort of camps of people who had been entrenched and they've been discussing this stuff kind of all day long.
Sure.
But yeah, it definitely switched gears once they started their presentation, and it was really cool to see how they were what they were all going to drop first of all. And yeah, one of the bigger items was the perilous journey. And the oohs and ahs in the room after they dropped tidbit after tidbit of how it was going to work. And we'll go through that some of that here right now. But yeah, it was fun to see that the community just basically on the edge of their seats waiting for all of these details.
Yeah, it's when we've talked about this before, but the speed at which this game is developing is just absolutely incredible. And a few other people in the crypto space have commented that a lot of other NFT based crypto games, their NFTs aren't doing much right now, and here we are, in a very evolved game, dropping some incredible new news. So, without further ado, let's get into that. So, I'm calling this the Hobbit's journey with a shout out to Tolkien. It's because it's a there and back again journey, right? So you send your heroes out to Crytalvale. They don't know where it is, and that's pretty risky. Walk us through what that risk means.
Right. So the way they basically phrased it was that, yeah, I kind of equate it to back in the day, like when, like Vikings were trying to find, the Americas, right? A
Okay,
lot of the
yeah,
times they probably didn't come back, or they might come back with riches.
sure.
And so I feel like that's exactly what they're playing on. And I think that's fantastic.
That sounds
Um,
fun.
but yeah, they basically mentioned too that this is like, and I know this is really important. This is an event. It's not going to be permanent. So, those of us who know now knowing that heroes can be burned or die in this quest, you don't have to participate if you value your heroes and or if you only have maybe a small amount of heroes that you cannot risk. So I thought that was really interesting too.
So, what's the survival percentage of sending a hero out there?
Yeah, so that was actually really cool. I love the way they did this, and I didn't actually see this coming, but it makes perfect sense. So it's basically kind of like a gradient of you've got a common basic hero who's level one on one end of the spectrum,
So, Steve
and
the
you have
Pirate,
a, yep, Steve the Pirate, that's right. He
Todd the
just got
Fisher.
summoned, no experience. Uh,
Todd
with
and
on the
Steve,
other,
they go out on the first boat, right?
yeah, I hope Steve has a red shirt. Anyway, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the mythic Dread Knight level 10, which is like the more or less perfect hero at this moment in time.
Okay.
And so that was the full gradient of hero caliber, if you will, that we'll be making this journey if we so choose. And they basically said that on the common end, you have a 35% chance to survive.
Whoa.
Yes, survive,
Survive. Wow.
not make it, survive,
So this
which
is
is
a
crazy.
so this is a built-in burning mechanism then too, right?
No doubt. No
Okay.
doubt. And then on the
Which
other end, I believe they said that it was you had about a 95% chance to make it successfully if say you were that mythic dread knight. So there's going to be a spectrum in there.
okay. All right. So that's interesting. And I believe there was some mention about pairing your heroes with a Gen Zero. Do you risk your Gen Zero going on the journey, or what happens there?
Yeah, so that was a very important, somewhat of a caveat, I guess I would say. Since the Gen Zeros are so limited and they're so vital to the genetic pool of our heroes, those will not be burnable. They are more or less permanent heroes, which we kind of figured, right? But it was interesting. It was great to hear them say that. So the Gen Zeros will not be able to die on the journey.
Okay, so
However,
they're the main
they're not
characters in Star Trek.
exactly. Captain Kirk never went down with the ship. He tried a few times, but never made it.
Right, right.
uh, but basically, yeah. So to counter that, I actually really like what they did is they said, some of these possible rewards that you might get for making the journey and or I guess payment for loss of a hero perhaps um, does not qualify for Gen Zeros. So
Okay.
they're basically just making it for a pat on the back, just to say they did it, I guess, if you would.
Okay. All right. So the rewards, let's just go right into the next topic here. So the rewards for making the journey, what are these? And I mean, are these like burning rewards, or are these rewards for making it on the other end, or a little unclear?
Yeah, I think we'll still kind of figure out a little bit more about this. That they talked for a little while about it, and they made it seem like it could be items, like in-game items. And the other thing that was really cool is they said if your hero makes it across, it'll be a full XP level. So,
Oh,
which is really interesting, right? So you don't want to make the journey with a guy who's almost at the top of his level. You want to wait if you're going to do it until he just levels up, so you can gain a full bar of XP. That was really cool. Um, and
wow.
then, yeah, I think, like I said, they said there was probably some jewel and crystal rewards that you'll receive for making the trip, and then probably in-game items, or possibly. And they didn't really elaborate a whole lot on that yet.
Well, did they talk about like runes? If someone dies off, there's like a rune that's like a tribute rune or something like that. Is that
Yeah, I wasn't exactly sure what they were referring to. I'm gonna have to go rewatch the video on that one to be honest with you. But again, oh, there was one more point I wanted to say about Gen Zeros. I forgot. Uh, they did make it sound that if your heroes can quote unquote hitch a ride with a Gen Zero, that Gen Zero will help boost their chances of making it successfully.
I
So
like
that, I
that.
mean, that is just crazy, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
like the
are we
the
looking
themes.
for
Yeah,
scripts now?
that's
Uh,
fantastic. All right, so that's pretty neat. And so then like some of the rewards, they talked a little bit about. Oh well, let's go to first. This is coming pretty soon, right?
yeah, I believe so. Soon was their word, and you know, we can read into that as much as we want, but typically when they say something's going to drop soon, it's within the next, I'll call cycle,
Uh
which I
huh.
would say, like, if it's the dev team on the AMA drop in info, before there's another dev AMA, usually it's dropped. So in my opinion, it's probably 2 weeks ish, maybe less.
Wow.
It could be a little longer, I suppose, but just kind of in the history, it seems like their cycles are like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, in their roadmap, I mean, they do have Crytalvale launching in Q1, and we're halfway through Q1, so that's 6 weeks left. So yeah, I mean, that's certainly within that window. So 2 to 6 weeks, that's impressive. That's a lot of work. So that's really neat. All right,
Yeah, no
so
doubt.
the next thing that stuck out to me, they kind of talked about Crytalvale Gen Zeros being a reward, and I actually kind of gone back and rewatched this video a little bit. I think one of the things they said is that the fallen heroes, they kind of depending on the heroes, I'll call it quote unquote worth when they expire, that you get a proportionate amount of raffle tickets that go into the raffle for more Gen Zero or for Gen Zero Crytalvale heroes. And something that stuck out to me that I thought was interesting is they really emphasized that, people have been asking the DFK team, how are they going to release the Crytalvale Gen Zeros? And they made it clear that most of those Crytalvale Gen Zeros are going to be released via in-game rewards and rewarding and incentivization systems instead of through purchase. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see that coming, but it actually makes a lot of sense because, thinking back to when they minted the original Gen Zeros, the community was still relatively small. So 2000 was a relatively large percentage of people who were really into the game could actually, if they had the jewel and could, afford it, were able to get them. And so now that we've grown significantly as a community over the last 3 months or 4 months, that's not going to work, especially when this expansion is a quarter of the size in terms of Gen Zero quantity. So I think it actually makes a lot of sense that you have to use playing the game to release new content. So I think that's just their mode of operation that they're going to be carrying forward, in my opinion. And it seems like land is going to fall under that exact same vein.
I love that. Now, and just to recall, you were in the game during that first Gen Zero release. What was like? How fast did those heroes get sold out?
Yeah, this is one of the things that I was chatting with Tosh about quite a bit. Uh, I think the whole lot of 2000 sold out in about 11 minutes.
Oh my
Um,
gosh!
and I believe I had at the time I had scraped together about 1,500 jewel, maybe 1,600 jewel. I can't remember the exact amount. So I pulled all of the money I had, basically in the game at that moment, out of the bank, out of the gardens, and I was ready. But I was not at my house, so I had to be on my phone. And
Oh man!
unfortunately, by the time I was able to get the button to load, like it didn't like load right, and by the time I hit click, the purchase prices had already exceeded the amount of jewel that I had left. And I was like,
Oh,
no. And
oh man!
I was telling Tosh too, it's like not only did I not get a Gen Zero, but I also paid a fee to withdraw my garden money. And I wasn't in the bank, so I didn't get to collect on all the boosted ratio
Oh
from all
right,
of the
because that
jewel
that
spent.
jumped that jumped. That was
I
like
think
the
it was
biggest jump.
8%.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So
Wow.
he was laughing at me a little bit. I'm like, yeah, that's right. I know it was my own fault, but it was funny.
Oh boy. Yeah. Well, I guess we're here now. We've made it through a few boo boos along the way. I certainly had a big boo boo a couple weeks ago that we can talk about some podcast soon.
Sure, sure.
Um, All right, so next they talked a little bit about a grant program. They brought Dreamer up on stage, who's now the president in the organization, and it seems like partnering with Frisky. So they're designing a program to lower the entry, the barrier to entry for new users. Still looking at the current cost of heroes, they feel it's kind of high. And so, what are like I guess the high level details of this new program?
Yeah, so the high level I would say is that, and we've kind of heard snippets of this before, but he really provided a lot more detail this time. So the high level was basically, if you can't afford a hero, there's a concept now that they're working towards where you can so people out there who have maybe tens of or 100 heroes or so, just literally don't have the time to quest them all, could basically put a contract out saying, hey, I want to let you use my heroes for say a week, and I want to make sure that you quest them at least twice a day, or details, right? Um, but basically, then people who don't have the funding could accept that contract, and say the contract says that if they meet that criteria, maybe they'll make um, 5 or 10 jewel over that week. So
Okay.
then the heroes are getting experience, and the person who owns all those heroes that doesn't have time to quest them, their NFTs are still gaining value,
All
and
right.
they're then paying a little bit of jewel, or it could be anything, I suppose, to these people who don't maybe have the resources, and they can
Mm-hmm.
then build up jewel to purchase their first hero, say.
Yeah, I'll say I was on the YouTube live when this happened, and I was kind of surprised by the amount of salt and tears in the YouTube discussion going on at the time. I thought this seemed like a pretty neat program. But I don't know. We'll see where the community lands on this. I'll be interested to kind of watch that. Maybe what I saw was just the loud minority, which sometimes happens on these kind of things. But I imagine probably the room itself was looking forward to this.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was definitely more of a, you could tell that it was the dev team, wanting to make a difference, not just to be profitable, right? It seemed like they wanted to make, now that they have this platform and this power, if you will, they wanted to use it for good, not just for profit. It's kind of
Mm.
the read of the room that I got, and I'm totally behind that. This is kind of a fantastic program, in my opinion, and I can't wait to see how it ends up working in the long run.
Yeah, that's really neat. Okay, so the next part that I thought was kind of interesting about this piece is they actually started indicating that there would be some kind of score ranking the people who are going out and almost like these bounty hunters who are doing quests for other people. And they mentioned that like these questers, that they were actually imagining this to be like a full-time job in real life. And I thought that was like, whoa, a little bit of mind blown. I think about the the genius mind map meme, and it's like that's the fourth level. I thought that was just a fascinating way. That's like, okay, that's really tying back to the real world and really giving someone an opportunity as well. If you want to go quest all day, go for it.
Yeah. And I think the little hidden nugget that I got out of that was they talked about your player, which is your profile, if you will, having some sort of on-chain information, right? So right
Mm.
now, the only thing that I've actually ever really researched or found about that was that you have a name, right, that shows up as the owner of the hero. So this kind of tells me something that I'd never really thought of or seen before, is that you might actually have additional on-chain data for your profile, and they like in the form of what level you are, I guess, in terms of this grant program. Like how reliable are you at fulfilling your contracts? So like that actually opens up the door to a whole lot of things. So it's almost like you as a profiler in
Interesting.
NFT now.
Interesting. Yeah.
I
Very.
this could be very, very cool, and I think this is something that we need to address. I'd love to sneak a question in on an AMA about that, because like I feel like they kind of opened up a box here that I'd never really considered before.
I like that. Yeah. Ah, good spot. Good spot there. All right. And so now this takes us to the main event, what we've all been waiting for. In the words of, gosh, it's his name is going to escape me now, but the famous boxing announcer, let's get ready to rumble. Um,
Yes.
Combat. So, all right. Every class will have a purpose. This is the first bullet note that I took from my notes here. Every class will have a purpose. Knight equals tank, wizard equals magic damage, and they're going to follow the RPG tropes. Anything else that stuck out to you in that vein about combat?
Well, so the first thing that they were pretty upfront with is they're like, it is going to be 3v3. I was like, yes, all right, we nailed that one. I don't know if we heard
Okay.
it in the AMA, but yeah, that the
Okay.
concept is to pick your three against his three or her three.
Uh huh. Yeah, I like that. And so now there's this entire, ecosystem or meta game around pairing your heroes. And they mentioned that a few times that battling is all about hero balance. One thing that really stuck out to me that their new combat developer mentioned is that they want the community to figure out that metagame. And I think that's a sign of their game developers having been around the block when it comes to strategy games. The meta game is what is considered to be the macro game that develops when there's a leading strategy or leading uh, counters to certain strategies. And they want the community to build that, develop that, and I think that's going to be really healthy for a battle system. And I also have a good feeling that they would stay with the right level of kind of finger on the pulse of a metagame. There's some games where a hero becomes strong. I think about my time in League of Legends, and you have a hero that's dropped right away. They're always overpowered, and then they get hit with the Nerf bat really hard
Oh
and
yeah.
on the next update. And I have a feeling that this team is always thinking two steps ahead, and they're going to be very careful about how they introduce balancing mechanisms. And they have gone out of their way to explicitly state every hero type has a purpose, and so I think they really want to find it. And I actually think that there might be more value in basic hero types than we originally gave them credit for. So what do you think about this and kind of a meta game, and maybe share with our listeners some of the combat games that you've played in your past?
Yeah, sure. I think this ties nicely with something we'd maybe previously talked about too, that's coming as well in the sense of items, right? You know,
Right.
if you're down to these three heroes and maybe you don't have perfect balance, but if you have the right items to provide that balance, I mean that's the next level game. You're not only balancing hero classes and skills now and skill trees, it seems like. So there's going to be choices that are going to it seems like permanently modify a hero on top of what items you currently have available, on top of what is your opponent thinking? This this is setting up to be one of the deepest kind of games, that it gets down to. And what this kind of makes me think of is, I've played. I'm trying to think what the name of the game. Oh yeah, yeah, Path of Exile. I've played that before quite a bit. Where the skill tree in that is like just absolutely ginormous, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
like hundreds of choices and paths that you can take through this tree. This might not be that quite that deep, of course, but you have the additional layer of, classes and like for real permanence on blockchain plus equipment. You're starting to get a pretty similar level of complexity, and it's really cool to see that develop and move forward here.
One of the skill trees that's most near and dear to my heart is Kotar.
Oh
That
yes.
that was fun. I loved upgrading to Force Lightning. That was always it feels good.
The my fun. This is kind of a little nostalgia here, but my favorite part of that game was you'd not level up your character and you'd build up all the XP until you became a Jedi. and then you just spend all your points just maxing yourself as a Jedi.
In the
uh,
advanced portion of the skill tree, right?
yep, that's right. Like immediately advanced. It was
Yeah.
great. Oh yeah.
All right, so yeah, let's so skill trees, the skill points that we're earning that we see every time that we go to the meditation circle, we hang out there, we find ourselves and we earn a skill point. And now those are going to go towards, so they're sticking on our hero cards right now, and eventually we're going to have visible to us some kind of skill tree like we talked about in the last episode that actually I'm pretty excited about. It sounds like the skill tree might also be influenced by your subclass, which is really undervalued right now. So now there's a place where we can spend these skill points. That sounds pretty neat. So next thing I really wanted to go into is they fully clarified the style of combat system. And so it is not going to be turn based, it is going to be idle combat. What does that mean? Can you explain that to us, Neindorf?
Yeah, essentially what it means is there's going to be in the terms of the player, a much more in-depth, upfront thought process where you fine-tune which heroes, you fine-tune their gear, you fine-tune their skills. Maybe even I'm foreseeing there being like battle stances. Maybe we've talked about this before.
Okay.
Like I want, my wizard to be full-on aggressive damage. I want my warrior to be, stand back, take the damage, kind of defensive. I kind of foresee that's the sort of thing that you're gonna elect when you hit begin battle, or I'm ready, if you will.
And
And
they
I
talked
gotta
about
assume
like
that there'll be
buffs and debuffs too. So I'm
yes.
hoping that some of the magic users, or maybe like a priest, would provide something like that as well. Sorry, I interrupted. Keep going.
No, no, that's a great point because, well, so yeah, is it which one's the healer? What's the monk and what's the priest, right? Because like
Right.
they seem similar, but they're still their skills are very different right now, and
Mm-hmm.
their stat points. I mean, so yeah, I cannot wait to see how that plays out, and I'm thinking that there'll be, they'll have to kind of release it in. I believe the way they phrased it was, everything's going to kind of come out in chunks, if you will. We'll release a little bit more, make sure it works, people are happy. A little bit more. Uh,
Mm-hmm. And I could see them doing that with the skill tree as well, where, they don't have to unlock all the, or reveal all the skill tree all at once. I think they could do that over time.
yeah,
And
like the fog of war for skills,
yeah.
right?
And then I think back to just last episode where you were talking about, summoners maybe being their namesake actually, and then hearing, this, announcement today where they're talking about every profession having, or not every profession, every class having a purpose. I think originally in the game I was thinking that summoner was just a better version of wizard, and now or priest, better version of those two. And now I feel like there is going to be a niche for everyone, and I don't know. I'm really excited about that, and hoping that some of those legendary basics that I have, are going to have a lot of strong value, and maybe they don't make the trip over to Crytalvale with Steve the Pirate.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the next thing too, right? You hit the nail on the head. We haven't really talked about that yet. We went over the details of the perilous journey, but maybe it's worth pausing and asking the question, how many or which of your heroes are you going to send?
Right. Yeah. That's my head's spinning right now, trying to think. Oh well, I have 33 of them. So
Oh,
maybe
wow, nice.
maybe instead of selling some of these guys, I might be looking to send them on the perilous journey and earn some of that crystal.
Yeah, so me personally, my immediate reaction hearing a lot of this was I'm going to send every hero I have.
Oh, that's
Honestly,
bold
so
strategy.
yeah, and if that Gen Zero thing works out and we're able to um, use our Gen Zeros as a team of
As a
three here,
shield.
yep, to help us ferry our heroes across. I mean,
Mm.
it's interesting, right? So I don't know that's where I'm at right now. Especially, I know that their rewards they'll give they won't be necessarily in equal value, but it's just one of those things. I got to really sit and think about this now.
Yeah, that's boy. It's gosh, there's going to be a lot of calculus that plays into this. So we'll have to keep talking about it each podcast along the way, and keep our listeners up to date with what our strategies are, and maybe even open up a channel on our Discord talking through how is everyone else going to approach this. I'd really love to hear from our community and get into what they're thinking. So the last bit on combat that stuck out to me is they're talking about they're going to do PvP first, and mostly there's going to be monetary rewards, and that PvE, so player versus environment, will follow later, and that's going to be more like material rewards. And some of the other things that they mentioned is they actually said that PvE will be harder because they're going to have to incorporate it into advanced quests. They want to incorporate it into lots of art and lore and those kinds of things. I mean, you were at Lore Central today, so what's this mean to you?
Yeah, I think that actually makes sense because if you think about any good game with depth, creating that set of quests and the lore and the imagery and the dialogue takes a lot of time. So I think this makes perfect sense. They want to make sure that they have a nice stream of PvE content, which I'll call the core game, really. I think that, in my opinion, is kind of the core of most games. A lot of times the PvP is just kind of like icing on the cake.
Uh huh.
Or some games are centered around PvP, of course. But that's kind of the read I got on that one is that they still maybe need more time to flesh out the quests. And, I'm sure that'll be an iterative process and it'll also be expansionary, right? They'll have more and more and more and more as time goes on, and as levels, hero levels get higher and higher.
That's it's really exciting to look forward to, and I know they even kind of dropped the idea of dungeon battles in the future. So that's pretty neat. And one thing that I think about with some other games that I've seen be very successful is they have significant events to occur in the community and in the timeline of the game. Like the event of the perilous journey, potentially the event of dungeon battles releasing in the future, and even like the evolution of dungeon battles. You can like take that to the next level where they've done this in all sorts of games where they call them raids or whatnot, where you can make a new lore element for that quarter of the year or that month of the year, and say, all right, players, go try to go battle in the player versus environment, or maybe there's an intermixing of like your guild can all go together on a quest, something like that. I really see that being the future of the game. It's going to keep people wanting to play, wanting to be invested, and it sounds like the team, between what they're delivering for the game itself and what they want to deliver for kind of people outside of the game, with the grant program. It seems like they're really invested in making this a successful long-term project.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly right. Um, here's my wild speculation for the night after all this. I think that if you have a hero that successfully journeys to all four realms, something really awesome is going to happen.
Oh
That,
my gosh, good call. Dang. All right.
that's kind of why I want to send all my heroes because I feel like that's where, as these new expansions get released over these years, I think that's where they're going to go with it. And imagine sending like a level, I don't know, 25 legendary hero across and he dies. Like, well, like just imagine.
Oh, I'll be
Uh,
sad for a few days, that's for sure. And they're dead. I mean they confirmed that
yes.
it's like you're kicking up daisies, right?
And that, yeah, I was chatting with Tash about that a little bit too, and we are like, is that what the Hall of Heroes is for, where you can see all the dead heroes maybe in the
Yeah.
castle?
Yeah.
So
Tribute.
yeah, we'll see how that works.
All right. Well, any other closing remarks here, Neindorf? I think we got through our brief notes on today's wild events.
No, I mean honestly, I just got to sleep on all this and rewatch it again, and then maybe we'll have more nuggets for next time's podcast. I'm still kind of spinning on all this information here personally.
All right, all right. Well, thanks for jumping on a podcast late and for making the perilous journey out there to Denver and slipping away from the day job. That's pretty awesome and bringing this incredible alpha to our listeners. So a big thank you for making the trip. And glad you're doing well, and glad you could help talk us through all these incredible changes. So, all right, that's it for the Adventures from DeFi Kingdoms crew. This is the Raph and Neindorf signing off.